like one of those interviews we used to do as politicians on the show. There were lots of microphones like this pointing at you. Anyway.
Well, starting with a really safe, easy one to begin with, how does it feel to be here meeting fans at London Comic Con?
It's always really amazing. Every year that goes by, that is another year since we stopped actually making Battlestar and it stopped being on the telly. You always wonder what you're going to get when you come to a massive room full of people who are obsessed with all the new shiny things that are out there and the wonderful stories that are being told in television and film and on YouTube and in Vines. God rest its soul. So yeah, it's just amazing to be still current and to meet people that just started watching the show last night or finished it last night, and to know that what we thought was a television show wasn't. It was just a long form story that people are continuing to discover and enjoy. That's the most amazing thing, I think.
And why do you think, of all these shows, Battlestar in all its different iterations is one that has lingered so long and so enduringly in fans and public consciousness?
Well, I mean, I think what great science fiction has always done is remove itself from the immediate social, human, political context enough for it to be universally applied, and that was what Battlestar did. It took a humanity that was very near to us, was inspired by the world that we were living in at the time, but removed it and put it into a different corner of the galaxy. And just that step of doing that means that it's always going to be relevant. If the writing's good and the acting's good and the sets aren't bad and the visual effects don't look too dodgy, then I think it will always feel immediate, hopefully, because it's really about what it is to be a human being in a big, scary, empty galaxy, and to wonder what we're here for, and to what we're here for specifically in a context where we've created something that's arguably better at being human than we are. And that's part of the dialogue. You read it in the papers every single day, artificial intelligence and how boundaries are being pushed, and how we're getting ever closer to the idea of a conscious machine. And once that happens, where does that leave us? And whilst the reality of that may not be as sort of as threatening or as baroque or as scary as the extinction of humanity by these sort of moustache twirling machines, nevertheless humans are becoming more redundant. I think just in the workplace, there's not as much for us to do, and there's more of us, and where does that leave us? Questions like that, and Battlestar dealt with those issues very dramatically, took it to their logical conclusions, and created great drama out of it. So I don't see how it becomes irrelevant if the acting style doesn't jar or the effects don't great. Then I think these stories will last forever.
Can you tell us about any upcoming projects that you have?
Yeah, I've got a few. I am currently shooting a thing for ITV in England called Fearless, which is a thing that Helen McCrory stars in, and I play a significant, fun character, ex-soldier who ends up becoming a politician and is involved somewhere in the story, but I can't say too much because it's kind of a political thriller, a legal political thriller thing, which I'm really enjoying at the moment, which will be in ITV sometime next year. I've just finished doing a French film called L'Embarras du Choix, which I guess you could translate as spoiled for choice, kind of. Anyway, French romantic comedy in French, which has been just amazing. Big French comedy director, big French actress star that I play opposite, and it'll be a big deal in France, but probably won't translate beyond France. But I live in France these days, so that was a big deal for me. I did a telefilm in Bulgaria called Crystal Inferno, which is a take on the Towering Inferno, and I don't know where that's going to end up airing, but those are the three things that I've been doing recently.
How do the acting industries differ when working in these different countries?
It's remarkably similar, to be honest. I think acting always comes down to pretending really well. So you pretend really well in different. For me, the challenge is to do it in a different language where there's arguably a sense of pretense already, trying to be a French speaker. Although I speak French pretty well, but it's just another layer of obstacle you have to get through to connect with some sort of inner truth. But when you're using a language that's not necessarily your way of expressing yourself, It's an extra challenge. But the character I was playing was a Scot, so I had a Scottish accent and then speaking French. So there's lots of layers. But the actual
inverse of Highlander.
yeah, well, yeah, no, it's a different world from Highlander, but yeah, it's a similar thing. But the nuts and bolts of filming, of acting. You know, I've been lucky enough to work in different continents and different languages and different cultures, and you know, we do things remarkably similarly. French do it with better food and shorter hours, much more civilized days in France.
When you were filming over in America, did you kind of stay in an American accent in between scenes, or did you?
Good question. I was encouraged to, but no, I didn't.
No.
I don't do that. I've tried it. And I find it reduces the confidence I have in the accent, because I'm less committed to it between the takes, and then I find the accent slips between the takes, and then I just feel like I'm in no man's land. I'd much rather be 100% me and then have a switch off moment where I go 100% the other way. Otherwise I find I'm sort of 85% or 60, and then I don't really know where I am. So no, I don't like doing that. But when I audition, sometimes I'm told by casting people, can you just go in that room and be American all the way? And I hate doing that. I really hate it. It's something I can do. I feel like I'm neither doing one thing nor the other. And it's strange, because some people are very good at it and they do it. I mean, Hugh Laurie, when I did the episode of House, we were talking about Cambridge and talking about his niece, who went out with a great dear friend of mine, and we shared a flat for a while. So we had all this sort of, you know, potential overlap thing, but you know, he was staying in character, which I respect, and I was not. And it's fascinating how different people do different things, and they're able to make it work for them. But for me, no, I'd much rather get to know the people as me during the day, and the crew and stuff. When you work on a TV show, it's more than just the performance. It's part of your life, and you get to know these people for 5 years. And I'd rather be me.
I mean, you talked about working with Hugh there. Obviously, when you're working on Battlestar, you had an amazing cast round about you. Can you talk about some of those experiences and some, when you look back, some of your fondest memories of that?
Oh, there's so many. You know, at the beginning, there was it was strange, because you know, you pick up this project, this title that I had been familiar with as a kid, and it feels childish. And then you see an actor of the stature of Edward James Olmos tell you it's the most important story he's ever worked on, and then you go, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense because it's kind of goofy. And then you had to assimilate what Mary and Eddie were bringing was a real, obviously, pedigree and a seriousness and a commitment to it. And then on a personal level, it was very important, because it was a big break, and you don't want to screw it up. You want to. You know, you want this to help in your chosen profession. So, you know, they changed it, you know, immediately. Just the way they brought a sense of gravitas to the subject matter, and I'll never forget the day that Eddie, we were being walked through the sets, and he just wanted everything messed up, like these beautiful science fiction shiny sets. He wanted them all messed up, and they said, hey, we're going to do that. He said, no, I mean, really messed up. I want this to be falling. And he walked around the whole place, and that was a sort of little image of what he did, you know, for us as actors. He just wanted everything to have that dirt under the fingernails, and from the performances to the costumes to the look of the whole thing. So many memories of, you know, different days and watching different performances, and we all grew up, you know, the younger actors all, you know, grew up on that set. There were 5 years of my life that took me from being single to having 3 kids and married, and same, you know, my friend James Callis also had 2 kids during the shoot. You know, we changed during the whole process, and the show changed us, and the people we worked with changed us. Michael Reimer changed me I remember at the very beginning he sat us down and said, let's talk about your character, and let's talk about what we can do with this character. And no writer or director had ever asked my opinion before, ever. Mm-hmm. You know, working in Britain, I was just told to read the lines and, you know, not screw up and hit your marks, and we'll go home afterwards and have a pint in wherever we were staying. But yeah, so it was empowering, and Ron Moore too. By the end, you know, the writers were encouraging us to, you know, share ideas, and it was giddy. It was a really special time.
did you kind of see where the show was going? At what point did you realise how it was going to end up, and did it kind of match up with what your expectations were of it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember a dinner with James Callis and Ron and I in Vancouver when we were riffing on where the show should end up, and I'm not sure, I think Ron always had in his mind what he was going to do, but I was reading some Richard Dawkins book about evolution at the time, and the various moments in evolution in the past where inexplicable leaps have been made, and human beings, some moment about 50,000 years ago, when sort of overnight we become artists and we start creating things, and what happened, and we were just guffing about where our show could fit into the timeline of actual humanity, of our experience of humanity. And obviously there were many different arguments about whether it should be in the future or the past or whatever it was. And I remember Ron being very open, and what ended up on the screen is uncannily similar to the sort of things that we were pitching to him, but I think there was a twinkle in his eye because he could see that he was always, obviously, he was the creator and is ahead of us, but he encouraged us to throw our sixpence in there, and I think he enjoyed that side of collaboration, and we certainly did. But yeah, there were lots of guessing games. There were many moments along the thing. The moment when I realised the show was going to be different than anything I expected was how seriously they went for the Cylon monotheism very early on, as opposed to these sort of pagan humans. I just thought that in America at that particular time, at any time in America, as soon as you make the baddies the guys who believe in one God, then you're spoiling for a fight somewhere. So, and it's always fun to be involved in a drama that's not scared to do that. And he wasn't scared. Ron wasn't scared.
I think talking about different sides to things, obviously you've talked about the cerebral side of the show, and I think that's definitely something that fans responded to. But within the fan base, there was also a real strong affection for the aesthetic merits of the cast.
Oh, right.
And I'm curious how you feel about having that kind of very different reaction from different sets of your fan base.
Well, look, I'm just a human, and I can be flattered like anyone's. And that was part of the show, and television, especially in America, it does sell itself a bit on the eye candy thing, and we were younger then, and it was we were in our prime, some of us, and it was all of us, I think, and it was a good-looking bunch. I mean, those robots were fine, weren't they? If you're going to make a robot, you may as well make it, so it looks nice. As Apple did with objects, where we can't help but hold them and play with them and all the rest of it. Whereas the remote controls of my youth were not very exciting. They were like these things. There were like too many buttons. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, the show had so many different aspects. Like if you were into sort of politics and the nuances of what it is to try and be faithful to a democracy in wartime, then you could get off on that. If you were into social commentary at the time we were working, the current affairs, you could make all sorts of parallels. But if you just like dogfights in space and blowing shit up, then you could get into that too. And most of us like a bit of all of it. So it was there's a lot for everyone. The fans reflect that. Get some very thoughtful people who've really pondered and it's reflected on the messages, and then you get some who just enjoyed it as an escapist adventure, and that's a wonderful testament to the creators and what they were able to do to provide something so multifaceted.
I guess that kind of leads on to my next thing, is that each of the seasons had a very, very different thematic feel. Some were more politically oriented, some were more kind of combat rebellion oriented. Do you have a preference for which one of those kind of things that you enjoyed more? Did you enjoy the more political aspect of the show, or the running around with guns side of it? What was your...
I enjoyed the more philosophical, political stuff, I have to be honest. I mean, I love the running around in the guns, and I love the Viper stuff, because that's a boy's, it's just a dream. You're flying a cool-looking spaceship in space. I mean, that doesn't get any better. When you watch it back on the screen, and it is every bit as exciting as you had in your head, and it happens to be you in that thing, it's amazing, and it makes me smile to this day. But in terms of what I respond to, it was all those difficult. Every time a character that you love ended up doing something that, in the current world, people that you were told were the enemy were doing, I just love that. I love that idea of having to inhabit somebody else's circumstances and having to make a sense of them when we can't. So for me, there's like season 3, I guess, or the stuff on New Caprica, which I wasn't really involved in. I just thought it was brilliant. And the rigged election and the expediency of the characters that you knew were the good guys, but they were doing things that bad guys do to win. They were winning at all costs because they knew that they were the ones that should win, and that we'd be better off if we did, and sacrificing ends to means, or means to ends, whichever way around. So yeah, it was all those bits that really got me going.
You've talked a lot about technology and AI and things like that, and I see there's a 360 camera on the table.
Is that what that is?
That is, yes.
I've been looking at it.
It is a 360 camera.
Sadly, I believe we just run out of
It's
battery.
very pretty.
But I am curious to hear your thoughts in terms of how you think technology is going to impact performance art and your industry as a performer.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Well, obviously, the renderings of the human face are getting better and better and better. And you watch some of these digital cartoons, and some of the expressions are almost better than you can get from an actor. I mean, an actor is an unpredictable thing. You can't get that perfect expression every single time. The lighting changes, whatever, your face changes, and it can ring true or ring false, and all sorts of things can happen. But watch some of these cartoons, and they're extremely moving, like emotionally. The pupil will dilate just that little bit, and it just gets you. So arguably, I think there is going to be a time and a place where the mimetics of technology will be so good that arguably they'll be better than any actor. But the one thing I just think you can't replace in humans is that element of chance, of surprise, that you would never predict logically in terms of behaviour. And that's what great drama is, I think. It's when you expect a certain reaction and the opposite happens, and it happens all the time, and you just have to watch the news and you watch interviews with people who've been through either something amazing or horrendous, and sometimes the reaction is inverse, and things like that. I think there will always be a place for real people, even if it's just to base the animation on the way they make computer games these days. They use real actors, but then they paint over them.
Archie.
Yeah. But nevertheless, we still are drawn to each other's eyeballs, and we still have to read each other for truth and for empathy and for all those things. And I think that comes from a place that will never go away, hopefully.